So what is assignment and what does it has to do with anything at all? Today you and I will be delving into discovering what assignment is. No. I'm not talking about a pre-sale assignment where you buy a brand new property from a developer and at the end you want to give it to somebody else before it completes. That's a different subject. Today we're going to be talking about assignments in contract of purchase and sale, which in the other word is offer, on residential properties. Let's chat. Hi, Axel, Ziba here. I'm with the Align Group at eXp Realty, and in this video, we'll be chatting about assignment and find out what is assignment and what do we have to do about it. As the name says it all, assignment is giving your responsibility of the contract and having somebody else take over that responsibility, but you're still being liable for it. Okay, so how does it work? Let me give you an example. Remember the cellular companies, they had a contract that you had to sign in for 2 years with TELUS or Rogers, and your only solution to avoid any penalties or getting out of this contract was to find a family member, a friend, so they can use the remaining of your contract and avoid paying penalties. There is a major difference in this and a residential contract of purchase and sale for assignment. And the major difference is the liability of the person still remains when they give out the contract. Meaning in the cellular companies back then, when you gave your line to somebody else, they actually did the credit check on them and they actually transferred it to that person's name, all done and perfect with, so you wash your hand from everything and you were not responsible. In the assignment terms of a contract of purchase and sale, you are still responsible up until the closing, making sure the closing goes through with the person that you assigned the contract to. Why is there a right of assignment? So Government of Canada, of course protecting people's right, came up with the assignment rights for the time of despair. Meaning if a family sign a contract and during the term of the closing, which it takes about maybe 1 to 3 months, if their financial situation changes, if anything within their lifestyle changes, they still have the right to assign the contract to someone else because they're still liable for that contract regardless. But there is another reason behind things as well. Some of the family members, they put their name on the contract and all of a sudden they recognize that they need to have their father's, their son, or a close family, or even a friend, or even in other words, their company needs to be on the title as well. Or they need to replace themselves with somebody else for the sake of getting a mortgage. As you can see, there are many reasons behind assignment, and we do as buyers have the right to do so. But stop. As of 2016, there has been some changes in contract writing and it requires your agent to follow some certain clauses to protect you for assigning your contracts, replacing your contract, or bringing somebody else to your contract as of then. Who remembers shadow flipping? And that was an ugly situation that happened back in then. So what was happening is a seller received an offer and it was accepted. That offer was providing a very long closing, let's say from 6 months to a year. And the seller accepted because they were happy with their price. During this term of 6 to 1 year, that particular buyer who hasn't exchanged the title yet, they haven't owned the property yet, they signed the property to many people way ahead. That happened in a very growing market in Vancouver, BC, and in many other parts of BC where home prices were going up on a daily basis. So these buyers, they practically sold to each other, and each buyer bought it for more expensive from the other one. At the end, the seller who sold his home for $500,000 all of a sudden recognized that a home 6 months to a year from then, where the actual closing took place, worth $800,000 to $1 million to the last buyer who was assigned through this exchange of a hand without even having the title in there. Was that right or was that not right? Because the seller was not being told that the property actually exchanged in hand, and it was absolutely blindsided. And hence, our regulator came up with a plan to protect the sellers for such activities. And they created clause 20A in contract of purchase and sale, or in other words, in the offer. I'm going to read through it. So there is a restriction on assignment of contract on 20A. The buyer and seller agree that this contract, A, that's number one condition, must not be assigned without the written consent of the seller. B, the seller is entitled to any profit, remember this part, resulting from an assignment of the contract by the buyer or any subsequent assignee. That particular clause of 20A is protecting the seller not to be blindfoldedly selling their property, knowing 3 months, 4 months, 6 months from then, their property actually going to exchange hands many times and be sold to somebody else for much higher price. Now, since this 20A clause was inserted into the new contract of purchase and sale back then in 2016, if you as a regular buyer want to add a family member or someone or replace yourself with somebody else for any reason, whether it's a mortgage, very innocent reason, you don't even have an intention to make money out of exchanging these people, you need to inform the seller and get their authorization. That is a very important step. It is crucial at the time of writing the offer is to have a discussion with your realtor and have an understanding of how this matter works. Because if you're planning to add somebody to the contract, removing somebody from the contract, or even as simple as it may sound, adding your company name into the contract, that falls under assignment. And at the time of writing this offer, it is important to protect yourself and placing a certain other clause to waive 20A on the contract of purchase and sale. But one more step your realtor needs to take and provide the sellers with notice to seller regarding of assignment terms disclosure. And that form, it needs to be signed and approved by the seller, approving you to have that assignment done, whether it's your family member getting added or anything. So other than in placing that clause into the contract and crossing off 20A in the contract and have both parties sign for the approval of this change, your realtor also needs to inform the seller of this notice by giving them that particular form. All right, so now everything is set and you are perfect to replace somebody prior to the closing if it's needed. However, what happens if the offer was done, accepted, and you are about to get in the mortgage, and all of a sudden the news comes in that you need to add your father in there, you need to add a secondary person to get an approval for your mortgage because your credit is not sufficient enough. Or all of a sudden you find out, oh my God, if I add my son to the contract instead of myself, then I would save the futuristic taxes or any hassle in the future of family exchange between hands. That's after the offer fact. So how does that work? Well, don't panic. In my world, every time I get a change after the offer is accepted and binding, any amendment, I'm afraid of it. Why? Because if you open the contract, it is opened. If you amend that contract, you're actually opening the contract. Not to panic as much, because there's a recommended clause provided by lawyers that you can put in the amendment and then insert your change of the amendment that you want to do from the contract. That particular clause is a lot of legal words inside, but in short, it actually says that we're not opening up a contract. Every terms and condition of the contract remains the same, but this is a proposal and it's not coming to any sort of interference with an existing contract, And if the buyer and seller agrees that, then that will be affected. And if they don't, then the original contract remains the same. So this clause will certainly be useful when you're doing any changes as an amendment to the contract. I do recommend this. So going back to our subject, after placing that clause of protection to keep the contract the same, you can easily put that this buyer can add or remove or replace him or herself by such person. What about the notice to the seller? So at this time, since the offer was accepted already, right now you're amending the contract, so you practically are not required to give that notice to that seller for that form that we talked about, because that needs to be done at the time of offer. So all you need to do to have the seller agree to the amendment of replacing yourself in a separate amendment to the contract. Hoping I made sense for this, but if you do have a question for amendment, for assignment, or any contract changes, or even writing a contract, don't hesitate. I'm always available for you. Just write it in the comment your questions, because this question actually came in from one of my viewers and I wanted to make this video for her. Talk to you soon. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you like it and subscribe to my channel for more information just like this one.